administer it to our kids? Do we get it on the black market? Do we make it ourselves and grow it? What do we do? If your child had no other options, what would you do as a parent? So in this one, Jack's Law, we always talk about that because this is one of the main laws that passed in Colorado. Jenny Storms, who's actually on the cover of the July-August issue, her son, who has Dravet's syndrome, Jax, and there's another child, Jax, Jacks. Governor John Hickenlooper signed back in May of 2015 that allows medical marijuana on school grounds. And this was like epic. We're like, yay, we have it on school grounds. But the bill was missing a lot of other ingredients to it. How do we store the medicine? Who actually administers it? Who takes the responsibility? Do our states actually back up our nurses and our people administering the meds? At a federal level, it's illegal. But at the state level, where are laws to protect our healthcare providers? So a lot of healthcare providers don't even want to touch it. And we can't just have it going to the nurses who are administering it. We need all healthcare providers in the hospitals, in long-term care facilities, in hospice facilities, in schools. And really, really taking a look at what we can actually do to benefit that. Well, they actually did sign this law, and we're excited, and they actually have another law that's coming up, which is Quinton's Amendment, which we don't feel that this one's actually going to pass because it doesn't address a lot of these issues. How are we going to store it? Who's going to administer it? And all these things. So when we're considering working on bills in the future for our children, we can make tons of laws and regulations, but ultimately I believe the solution is decriminalization. A lot of people don't agree with me on that, but if we do decriminalize it, we can study it, we can grow it, we can have everything. Enterprise still can happen, recreation is there, it's going to be there forever. But we need to actually have the healthy part of the plant, and that's even with juicing. Heather had mentioned about juicing. Juicing is one of the most beneficial ways, but we can't get fresh plants. We can't go to the grocery store like we can spinach and get fresh spinach. But one day, I do see that we can actually have this ability, whether or not we grow at home and have that ability and lift the halo, the 25-mile halo that we have here in Nevada, or do dispensaries actually go into those avenues and start thinking about those things? There's not always a profit in those little industry cottage creations, but I think it's still very necessary. We need to consider those things through legislation as we're going on. So everyone wants to know about the anecdotal cases, and my heart goes out to these kids. In this issue that we had in July of August of 2017, we actually featured 8 different children. I've already talked about 2 of them out of Colorado, but some of the ones I want to discuss now, and that we are so beloved to, is Saving Sophie. She was an 8-month-old child in Southern California in LA who actually had an optic-pathic gliomal tumor on her brain. Now, at an 8-month-old child, you're thinking to yourself, how do you do that? What are the methods of treatment? You automatically are going at radiation and chemotherapy and even possibly surgery. And these are not very good success rates, folks. Okay, when you're putting a little 8-month-old under the knife and even through anesthesia alone has high risks. And this actually tumor had a 90% survival rate. And it had an 80 to an 85% recurrent tumor. So even if they got the tumor out, or even part of it, you're always going to keep that one little cell floating around in the body. And works amazingly with this cannabis is this was actually able to shrink her tumor all the way down. She is now, Sophie, we just love her to pieces. She's this beautiful little blue-eyed, blonde-haired child that's already in kindergarten. She's thriving. She's making her milestone makers that much more. And they've been doing some amazing work. They started, a lot of these parents that get involved, they start other organizations, and they started CannaKids and cannakids.org. And they actually started taking parts of, they started working with Israel, some of the same researchers that Heather was talking about in Israel with Professor Raphael McCullum. And they're utilizing her samples to actually have true live studies. This is epic, you guys. This is exactly where we need to go. And everyone's saying we need research. Well, it's happening. It might not be happening in our country because our laws haven't caught up to the science, but it is happening in other countries and states. So we love these people. We love these guys. They just came out with a video called Weed the People. And Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein have a documentary that they just came out with in March. So I encourage you to look through that video and that documentary. It's really life-changing. And one of the other things is, we always talk about when you first start into cannabis, it's not like an antibiotic that you take for 10 days and you're cured. Cannabis is a lifestyle change. Once you start, it is with you the rest of your life. So with Sophie, they had stopped her cannabis use because they thought it was all gone, all the MRIs, EKGs, everything was coming out great. So they stopped it for about 2 months. Well then, it's an 80 to 85% reoccurrence rate. So guess what happened just recently? When they were on a trip going over to Hawaii to do a lecture just this last spring, she came down and her tumor started coming back. So when I talk about a lifestyle change, it is a lifestyle change, and we don't know all the answers yet. We don't know why that came back and what levels and everything work best, but we're working on it. So we love Sophie, and feel free to read up on her article also. Logan. Oh gosh, I love Logan. He's a little child from Arizona who had regressive autism and encephalopathy. Now, you're probably thinking, what the heck is that? Well, he's a child that had over 100 seizures a day. He had such a severe condition of autism that they literally had to put a helmet on him because he literally would take, and he couldn't take him out in public. He constantly was hitting his head up against things, so severe that they're thinking, you know, self-damage, and thinking the TBI, total brain injuries, what's actually going on with this child. Every single treatment option that was naturally out there failed for them. And this mother finally was reading up and said, you know what, there has to be something else out there. What did she do? She started Googling, just like I did. And sure enough, she's now runs the mamausa.com. They're very active in Arizona and in Texas. So if you want some good organizations or even thinking about starting one here, get in contact with these moms. These moms are making amazing leaps and strides. So Logan, Nurse Heather and I were at one of the conferences, and sure enough, he shows up, and he's got the little orange shirt right over here with Nurse Heather on the far side. First off, he never once ever engaged with anyone in a room. The first time he came up to us, he literally walked up to Nurse Heather and was just like in love with his long braids. I mean, he literally was actually interacting, and it was through the use of cannabis that his mother was using, who helped get him into these better conditions. So he was improving, he's talking, he's walking. He went and visited the Easter Bunny last year for the first time and actually integrating and being a normal child. You guys, this is epic. This is important stuff here. And that's our Logan. So today he lives a normal life because of the use of his cannabis. And that's in the state of Arizona. The third one I want to actually talk about is our Colton Turner. He was a 13-year-old at the time, and he came down with Crohn's disease, and due to some of the other complications during his care and utilizing the treatment options that they have, also developed rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. And he was a child that actually had to move from their hometown of Illinois and be one of the cannabis refugees and came to Colorado. And there still was problems. Yes, Colorado had cannabis use for minors, but in Colorado you have to have 2 physicians. So not only do you have to find your pediatrician that's following along, you also have to have second recommendation. Not all states are that way, but it is in Colorado. So it's available, but it still makes it very difficult in some of these hoops. The other thing is, you might be able to get the use for it, but when you actually need to go to the emergency room, you might not always have the support of your staff on board because they don't know about it. They're not educated on it. So how do we do that? And I love Colton so much because he has gone around the country and has educated from a very young boy. He's now over the age of 18, but he always had said in any of his lectures, and he always told the people, I'd rather be illegally alive than legally dead. And to have a 14-year-old child with that amount of knowledge at such a young age is profound. And he is a wonderful example of how cannabis can actually benefit children. And I just was reading on social media how this family now is actually going back. They actually had to uproot the whole family to Colorado. They actually are moving back to Illinois. Some of the laws in Illinois are changing, so which is beneficial, and now they get to go back with their family and their nucleus. So the key on this is, even though kids are being able to utilize this medicine, it's still not there yet. We still need to be able to have it incorporated where our families don't need to be split up on a regular basis. A lot of questions I get from parents or from care teams and from medical staff is what to look for when choosing cannabis pediatric care. And this is extremely important because you don't have the support of regular conventional methods. This is a very unique one that's very controversial. So when you're looking for a physician, and especially in pediatrics, look for one that has a high quality in pediatrics. In the state, have they been written up on the boards or not? Are they reputable? Are they gonna look like a whacktivist, or do you actually have a doctor that's actually understanding the medicine? And with a spotless record and in good standing with the American Medical Association. These are important things. And most importantly is, do they understand the endocannabinoid system and the science behind the plant? Now, not all doctors are going to be able to answer that, but the key question to ask them after that, if they don't know about it, is your pediatrician willing to learn about it? That is a huge importance. Are they going to be on the team with you? And if they're not, keep looking. And do they follow state medical board guidelines? Especially, do they understand the medical program within your state? Do you even have a medical program in your state? And if not, is that doctor on board to help you get through that? Because federally, there's some red tape that we still need to go through. And another thing that people don't even consider is, do they offer an attorney protection program? And in that respect is, if you ever have to end up in court because you're giving cannabis as medicine to your child, is your physician able to stand behind you? And do you have good legal representation to stand behind you? It's extremely important. Why? Because don't think it's not going to happen to you. And there are actually groups and legal practitioners across the country that actually do fight for kids and help out too. So if you need those resources, do get a hold of us. And is your physician there for you? When your kid is coding and having a seizure activity, do they understand what methods of treatment work best for you? And are they working on maybe even titrating a child off of some of these meds? You need a physician for that. We as nurses can't do that, but we can recognize it and call your doctor and say, hey, we're utilizing this, so now what can we do? And it's a cohesiveness to your healthcare team. And lastly, you must, this is a must, develop a knowledgeable support team. And this can be from nurses, healthcare providers, family members, friends, and activists who know and understand the endocannabinoid system. And building that team is important, and they have to understand that it's your best choices, not the choices that society wants us to have upon us. So, we've already talked about the children in the medical cannabis, current laws for children, and mostly I want you guys to remember all that education is the key. Talk to your kids about the use of cannabis. If you have a teenager that's consuming, there's probably a reason why he's utilizing it and self-medicating. If it's for your younger kids, age appropriately talk about cannabis. Why do mommy or daddy use cannabis as medicine? It's not that you're using dope or anything like that, or these negative Nancy Reagan sayings that I learned as a child, but really reinventing the wheel and talking about it. Our kids are going through so much these days. And do remember, they are our future. And remember always that education is the forming of impressions on souls. Anyways, Heather, I don't know if you're still back out here, if we have time for this and where we're at. No questions. We will be at our booth after this if you want to come by, and we do have some of the magazines with this issue. Some good information of pearls and wisdom. We thank you so much for your time, and enjoy your weekend.